The impossible labyrinth. The alien guards dragged Daniel through the iron gates. The sound of chains and screams filled the air. Around him, prisoners of many species cried as the walls of the Death Labyrinth shifted like a living beast. No one had ever escaped this place, not once in 1,000 years. The aliens laughed as they shoved him forward. Their voices were cruel. "Another weak human. He will not last an hour." They spoke with confidence, for they had seen warriors stronger than steel break inside these twisting halls. They had seen mighty predators eaten by the shadows within. Daniel stood still. His wrists were bloody from the cuffs, his clothes torn. Yet there was something strange in his eyes. He was not trembling like the others. He was not begging for mercy. Instead, he looked calm, almost curious. The labyrinth rumbled, the floor cracked, and a new passage opened in front of him. The walls moved as if alive, stone grinding against stone. The air was heavy with the stench of death. The guards shoved him inside and sealed the gate. The last sound he heard from outside was laughter, harsh and mocking. Inside the maze, the silence was thick. Daniel took a slow breath. He had heard stories of this labyrinth before. A prison built by aliens, a maze filled with traps, monsters, and shifting paths. No one had survived past the first night. Some said the labyrinth itself was alive, testing every step. Other prisoners were scattered around, some from insectoid races, others with glowing eyes or scaled bodies. They looked broken, their hope already gone. One alien whispered to him, "You should give up. Human, no one escapes, it is death." But Daniel only gave a small smile. He did not answer. His mind was already working, calculating. He was not the strongest in the galaxy, not the fastest, not even the most intelligent. But he carried something that many underestimated. Human. Cunning. The first chamber opened with a hiss. From the ceiling hung blades that swung like pendulums. Below, the floor cracked into pits of fire. The prisoners screamed, pushing back in fear. One insectoid tried to run, but the blade cut him in half before he reached the other side. Daniel stepped forward slowly. His eyes followed the rhythm of the swinging blades. He remembered something from Earth. He remembered the times he watched construction workers swing heavy cranes. He knew that every rhythm, no matter how deadly, had a pattern. He waited, silent. His feet shifted slightly. He counted under his breath. 1, 2, 3. His body moved like water, sliding past the first blade, stepping just as the second swung away. His timing was perfect. He did not run. He flowed. The prisoners gasped. The alien watchers above frowned. This was not normal. This human was not panicking, not stumbling. He was using something simple, something unexpected. Halfway through the chamber, Daniel crouched. He touched the floor with his fingers, and with a sharp piece of stone he marked a small scratch. It was almost invisible, but he placed it carefully again and again. Each corner he passed, he left a mark. The others did not understand. To them, it looked like madness, but Daniel was mapping the labyrinth in his own way. Every scratch was a memory, every sign a guide. This was the Earth trick, the same way children once marked paths in corn mazes or forests. A trick so simple that no alien had thought of it. The floor shook. A wall crashed down behind him, sealing the path. The labyrinth was shifting again, but Daniel was not afraid. He had left his marks. He had a map where no map was possible. The screams of monsters echoed through the stone halls. Glowing eyes appeared in the shadows. The air grew colder, and whispers carried through the darkness. The labyrinth was alive, hungry. But Daniel walked forward, calm as ever. The guards above whispered in unease. For the first time in 1,000 years, they saw something different. A prisoner who did not break at the first step. A human who smiled. Inside the Death Labyrinth, and somewhere deep in the darkness, the labyrinth itself seemed to pause, as if curious, as if it had found a new kind of prey. The labyrinth did not wait long before it showed its teeth. Daniel had barely stepped into the next chamber when the floor split open. A black pit yawned wide, filled with shining spikes sharper than swords. Above, Chains rattled, and huge slabs of stone began to fall like hammers from the ceiling, the yard. Other prisoners cried out in terror. Some turned back, pounding on the wall that had sealed behind them. Others froze where they stood, trembling. The insectoid who had warned Daniel earlier whispered, "It is the pit of blades, none cross alive." The alien watchers above laughed. Their glowing eyes followed every move. "Watch the human fall. His bones will join the others." They hissed to each other, but Daniel did not look afraid. His gaze swept across the chamber. His breathing slowed. He studied the rhythm of the falling stones, the speed of the chains, and the distance of the pit. His mind worked quickly, connecting details. He had seen something like this before, not here, not in a labyrinth, but back on Earth. He remembered construction sites where wrecking balls swung in arcs. He remembered the old childhood games where kids jumped between moving swings at the park. To others, this chamber was chaos, but to him it was only another puzzle. He bent down, his fingers brushing the floor. With a small piece of broken metal, he scratched another mark, a faint line at the edge of the pit, then another on the wall beside him. He was building his hidden map, leaving signs where no one else dared to look. "Is he mad?" one alien prisoner hissed, watching as Daniel calmly bent to the ground in the middle of a death trap. Daniel ignored them. He whispered to himself, "Count the fall. Count the swing." His eyes locked on the slabs of stone. They crashed in. Order. Left, right, center, pause, then again. Left, right, center, pause. The rhythm was deadly, but it was also predictable. He stepped forward. One stride, then another. His body moved at the exact moment the stone swung back. His shoulder brushed the rough surface, but the hammer missed his head by an inch. The prisoners gasped. One shouted, "Impossible!" The guards leaned forward, uneasy. This human was not running blindly like the others. He was weaving through death like a dancer. Daniel crouched, his hand brushing the edge of the pit. He looked down at the blades gleaming below. His reflection stared back at him, twisted and sharp, but his eyes stayed calm. He pulled a small pebble from the ground and dropped it into the pit. It bounced once, twice, then stuck, impaled. That was enough. He had measured the distance, the depth, and the gap. He backed up, 2 steps, waited for the rhythm of the falling stones, then sprinted forward. His foot hit the edge at the perfect second. He jumped, twisting his body. Time slowed. The prisoners held their breath. The aliens above leaned closer. Daniel soared over the pit, the wind from the falling stone brushing his back. Then he landed, his fingers grabbing the far ledge. He pulled himself up with a grunt, rolling onto solid ground. The chamber shook, as if the labyrinth itself was angry. The walls groaned, and the floor shifted, trying to trap him again. But Daniel had already left another small scratch on the wall beside the ledge. His hidden map grew stronger with each step. The prisoners on the far side stared with wide eyes. For the first time, they saw something new. A spark of hope flickered in their chests. "The human." "He crossed," one whispered. Their voices trembled, not with fear this time, but with awe. The guards above did not laugh now. They muttered among themselves, "He should be dead. The pit never spares. How did he see the rhythm? How did he measure the leap?" Daniel did not answer. He simply stood, brushing the dust from his hands. His eyes scanned the next door as it groaned open. He knew more traps waited, more monsters in the dark. But he also knew one truth. Every trap had a pattern, and every pattern could be broken. He turned back once, his voice steady as he said, "The labyrinth is not perfect. It only wants you to believe it is." Then he walked forward, disappearing into the shifting shadows. The prisoners whispered his words to each other, like a secret flame passed from hand to hand. "The labyrinth is not perfect," they repeated. And in the chambers above, the alien masters grew restless. For the first time in centuries, fear touched them. A human was walking their maze, not as prey, but as a challenger. The next chamber was not silent. From the shadows came a low growl, deep and rumbling like thunder underground. The prisoners froze, their eyes wide. They knew this sound. It was the sound of the labyrinth's hunters. The walls shifted again, opening dark tunnels on both sides. From within, glowing eyes appeared, dozens of them, burning yellow and red. The air filled with the stink of wet fur and iron blood. The labyrinth had unleashed its monsters. The prisoners panicked. Some ran, forward blindly screaming. Their feet slapped against the stone as claws scraped after them. The screams ended quickly, bones cracking, blood spilling. The hunters were fast, faster than any prey could run. Daniel did not move. His body was still, his eyes sharp. He watched the way the hunters slinked, their bodies low, their tails whipping. Behind them, they were huge, their hides armored with bony plates, their jaws filled with knives. Yet something about them felt familiar. He remembered wolves in the forests of Earth. He remembered how his ancestors once faced predators far larger than themselves. The trick had never been to run. Running made you prey. The trick was to think like the hunter. The guards above laughed again, though their laughter carried unease. The beasts will tear him apart. They have never failed. Daniel crouched, low, his hand brushing the ground. He picked up a small shard of stone. Then he looked at the tunnel walls, cracked and uneven, perfect places for echoes. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening. He heard the growls, the scrape of claws, the heavy breath of the beasts. Then he threw the stone, not at the beasts, but against the far wall. The sound cracked like a whip in the chamber. The monsters jerked their heads, their glowing eyes flashing toward the noise. One growled and lunged, smashing into the wall. The prisoners gasped. They did not understand, but Daniel's lips curved into a faint smile. He had created a distraction. Another beast stalked closer, its breath hot. Daniel took a step sideways, then scraped his boot hard against the floor. The sound echoed sharply. The monster snarled and rushed at the noise, missing Daniel by inches. Its jaws snapped shut on nothing but air. The guards leaned forward, their voices uneasy now. He is confusing them. He is not running, he is controlling the hunt. Daniel moved like a shadow, his steps slow and deliberate. He used every sound he could create, every echo, every stone. Each noise sent the hunters chasing after ghosts. Their armored bodies slammed into walls, their claws raked empty floors. One prisoner whispered, trembling, "He fights them without fighting." Another whispered back, "No, he tricks them, like prey that has teeth." But not all beasts were fooled. One crouched low, watching, its eyes glowed brighter than the rest, its movement slower, more patient. It had learned not to chase the false sounds. Instead, it crept toward Daniel, silent as death. Daniel saw it. His heart raced, but his face stayed calm. He whispered to himself, "So you are the alpha." He knew this one was different, smarter, and he knew how dangerous an alpha predator could be. He reached into his boot and pulled free a strip of torn cloth. He tied it around a rock and set it aflame from the spark of his small metal shard. Then he hurled it into the shadows opposite. The alpha. The cloth burned bright, the flame flickering. The alpha snarled, its eyes narrowing. But the others, dumber and wilder, rushed toward the flame. Their heavy bodies crashed together, snarling and biting at shadows. The chamber shook with chaos. Daniel used the moment. He moved fast now, sliding along the wall, his hand leaving, another scratch mark on the stone. His secret map grew again, guiding his path deeper. The alpha's head whipped toward him, its eyes glared, its jaws opened wide. Daniel turned at the last moment, and with another stone he smashed the wall beside him. The echo thundered through the chamber. The alpha lunged, but not at him. Its ears had betrayed it, its instincts too sharp. It pounced on empty stone, slamming headfirst into the wall. The labyrinth trembled with the beast's roar. The prisoners cried out in disbelief. They had seen death turned aside with tricks. They had seen a human survive what none before had. Daniel moved into the next tunnel, his breathing steady, his mind replaying every sound, every echo. He had turned the hunters into prey, using nothing more than noise, fire, and patience. Above, the alien guards no longer laughed. Their voices were tight with fear. "This is not possible. He should be dead. How can a human do this? How can he make the beasts blind?" And somewhere deeper, the labyrinth itself shifted, as if curious. as if it understood that this human was not like the others. It sent its walls groaning, its tunnels trembling. Preparing the next trial, Daniel glanced back once, his voice quiet, but firm. Predators don't win by strength alone, they win by mistakes. And you made yours when you thought humans were only prey. Then he stepped forward, vanishing into the darkness where the next horror waited. The tunnel narrowed until Daniel had to crouch. The walls pressed close, dripping with moisture. The air grew hot, heavy. Every breath felt like breathing steam. The prisoners behind him whispered nervously. They had seen him outsmart blades and beasts, but none had ever passed this next chamber. The ground shook, and the tunnel split open into a wide cavern. A roar filled the air, half like rushing water, half like fire exploding. Before them stretched a deadly river. Waves of boiling liquid crashed against the stone. The heat was so strong it burned, skin from just standing near. In the center of the chamber, great jets of flame shot up in random bursts. Water and fire danced together, a deadly rhythm. One prisoner fell to his knees. His insectoid body shook. "This is the chamber of fire and water," he cried. "No one crosses, not even the strongest." From above, the alien guards leaned over their crystal screens, watching. Their voices were smug again. The beasts could not finish him, but the human will burn, then drown, the labyrinth always wins. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He did not step back. He studied the chamber the way a sailor studies the sea. His gaze followed the waves, the bursts of fire, the flow of steam. His lips moved silently, counting, measuring. It was chaos to everyone else, but not to him. He saw something beneath the chaos, a pattern. The fire erupted, but it always returned in the same places. The waves crashed, but they followed a rhythm not unlike tides. He whispered, "This is not chaos. It is timing." The prisoners behind him shook their heads. "You cannot time fire. You cannot fight water." Daniel crouched and touched the wet stone. He felt the rhythm in the ground. He tapped his fingers in time with the bursts. He smiled faintly, remembering Earth. He remembered skipping stones across a river. He remembered waiting for waves to roll back before stepping in. "This is no different," he muttered, "only hotter." He tore a strip of cloth from his sleeve, soaked it in the damp on the floor, and tied it across his mouth. He knew the steam could choke a man faster than fire itself. Then he stepped forward. The first burst of flame shot up, and the prisoners cried out, but Daniel did not flinch. He waited 2 heartbeats, then moved. His foot landed exactly where the steam cleared. His body bent low, sliding under a burning jet. Just as it died, he moved again, counting. His steps matched the rhythm of the fire, each stride a dance between water and flame. The boiling liquid surged forward, but Daniel stepped back at the exact moment, letting it rush past without touching him. Then he leapt forward again. The guards above leaned closer. Their laughter was gone, replaced by whispers. "He moves, like he has seen this before, but no one has ever seen it. No one has ever survived it." Daniel ignored their voices. He kept moving, his eyes sharp, his breath steady. He timed each burst, each wave, his body twisted and bent. He dove, rolled, and jumped. Every move precise. At one point, the fire caught the edge of his sleeve. Flames licked up his arm. He gritted his teeth, tearing the fabric away before it consumed him. His skin burned, but he did not stop. He could not stop. The prisoners gasped, watching him vanish into steam, then reappear on the other side of a wave. He was like a shadow slipping between elements, not fighting them, but flowing with them. One prisoner whispered, "He is not stronger, he is not faster, but he sees what we cannot see." Another whispered back, "He finds order where we only see death." Finally, Daniel reached the far side. His chest heaved with breath. His skin blistered, his clothes torn, but he was alive. He bent down, picked up a shard of stone, and scratched another mark into the wall. His secret map continued, growing stronger. Each mark was a memory, a promise that he was not lost. Behind him, the prisoners stared with wide eyes. Hope flickered again, stronger this time. He crossed, the human crossed. They whispered in awe. The labyrinth groaned, as if angry, as if insulted. The floor shook violently. The steam hissed louder. The walls shifted, closing off tunnels, opening new ones. The maze itself seemed to roar. Above, the guards no longer mocked. Their voices were sharp, fearful. He makes the impossible look simple. If he keeps going, others may follow. The labyrinth may lose its fear. Daniel leaned against the wall for a moment, his breath heavy. Then he looked back at the survivors who had not yet dared to move. His voice was steady, almost cold. The labyrinth is not alive. It is a machine. Machines have flaws. Then, he turned and walked into the next tunnel, his shadow swallowed by the darkness, his words echoing behind him like a spark in dry wood. And for the first time in centuries, the labyrinth did not only feel dangerous, it felt vulnerable. The labyrinth had always been a place of silence, filled only with screams and death. But now there was something different inside its twisting halls. A whisper, faint at first, then growing louder. It spread from prisoner to prisoner, carried in low voices. "The human is still alive," one said, trembling. "He passed the blades." Another whispered, "He tricked the beasts." Someone else added, "He crossed the fire and water." The words echoed like a forbidden song. For centuries, the labyrinth had been a graveyard. Now, for the first time, it felt like hope was breathing inside its stone walls. Daniel walked ahead, his eyes sharp, his body worn but steady. He left his secret marks on every corner, scratches no alien guard could see. Behind him, shadows moved. Prisoners who had once given up now followed quietly. They stayed far at first, unsure if his path would mean salvation or death. But when the next chamber opened, the choice came swiftly. The floor dropped away, revealing a pit filled with black mist. From the mist rose skeletal hands, clawing at anything that touched them. The prisoners froze. One screamed, "It is the pit of shadows." None survive. The alien guards leaned close to their crystal screens. Their voices were mocking again. "The human's tricks will end here. The shadows eat not flesh, but spirit." Daniel crouched low, studying the pit. He tossed a pebble into the mist. The skeletal hand surged up, clawing wildly at it, then sank again. He studied the rhythm, slow and strange. He remembered again something from Earth. "Like quicksand," he muttered. "The more you fight, the deeper you sink." Instead of running across, he moved slowly, his body bent low, his steps light. When the mist surged, he stopped, waiting. When it sank, he stepped forward again. The prisoners behind him gasped. They had seen hundreds fall screaming into the mist, but the human walked calmly through, step by step, every movement measured, controlled, as if he knew the shadow's hunger could be. Fooled by patience, when he reached the other side, he scratched his mark and looked back. His voice echoed through the chamber, calm but firm. "If you want to live, follow my steps. Do not run. Do not fight. Move as I moved." At first, no. One dared, then one prisoner, a scaled alien with trembling claws, stepped forward. He followed carefully, mimicking Daniel's timing. The mist surged. The skeletal hands reached, but he stayed still. When they sank, he moved. And finally, he reached Daniel's side. His body shook, his voice broke. "I crossed, I lived." The others gasped, and one by one they began to follow. The insectoid who had once told Daniel to give up now walked carefully across, his many legs shaking. But when he reached the far side, his eyes glowed with new strength. Soon a dozen prisoners stood beside Daniel, alive where they should have been dead. Their whispers grew louder. "The human shows the way. The labyrinth can be beaten." Above, the alien guards grew restless. Their claws tapped against the glass. "This is not allowed. Prisoners are not meant to survive. He is turning them into a group. He is giving them hope." The commander of the guard slammed his fist. "If this continues, rebellion will spread. Beyond the labyrinth, kill him. Kill them all." But the labyrinth itself did not obey so easily. It shifted, its walls groaning, almost as if it was listening, almost as if it was curious about this human who refused to die. Daniel looked at the faces around him, their eyes no longer hollow, their breaths no longer filled only with despair. He had not planned to lead them, but now they followed. His voice was steady. Stay close, watch the walls, mark the ground if you can. The labyrinth is not perfect. Together we can break it. The prisoners nodded, their whispers were no longer weak, they were strong. A chant rising quietly. The human leads. The human survives. We survive. The guards above felt the shift, not just in the labyrinth, but in the air of the prison world itself. For the first time, the Death Labyrinth had failed to crush hope. Instead, it had become the seed of rebellion. Daniel walked forward, his hand brushing the wall, leaving another mark. He did not smile. His face was hard, his mind sharp. He knew the next challenge would be worse. The labyrinth would not allow such defiance without fury. But behind him, footsteps echoed. Not the lonely steps of a doomed man, but the growing march of survivors. And in their whispers lived something dangerous. Something the alien overlords had never faced inside their perfect maze. Hope. The labyrinth had twisted and shifted many times, but now its movements grew violent. The walls slammed shut behind the group of survivors, sealing every path they had crossed. The ground shook, dust rained from the ceiling. It was as if the maze itself was angry. Daniel led the way, his hand brushing the stone, leaving another faint scratch mark. The prisoners followed close, their breaths quick, their eyes filled with both fear and faith. They whispered again and again. The human knows. The human sees. Finally, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber unlike any they had seen before. At its center stood a towering crystal heart, pulsing with cold blue light. Veins of energy stretched from it into the walls. The air vibrated with a low hum. The labyrinth itself was alive here, its core exposed. One prisoner gasped. The labyrinth. Core, another whispered. It thinks, it feels. It controls everything. No one survives against it. Above, the alien guards cheered. Yes, now he faces the master of the maze. Even human tricks cannot defeat the core. It is the mind of the labyrinth itself. Daniel stared at the pulsing crystal. His eyes narrowed. He could feel its presence inside. His skull, a pressure, a whispering voice. The core spoke without words, images flashing in his mind. Every failure, every scream, every death that had ever happened here. It wanted him to break, to surrender. The prisoners around him cried out. Clutching their heads, some fell to their knees. The core was inside them, feeding on their fear, making them relive their worst moments. Daniel staggered, but he clenched his fists. His mind fought the visions. He whispered to himself, "It's only noise. It's only a machine. Machines have flaws." He forced his eyes open, ignoring the visions. Instead, he looked at the crystal carefully. He saw the hum, the pulse. He counted it. 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, 2, 3, pause. It was like a heartbeat, predictable, steady. The core roared, the chamber shook. Stone spikes shot from the floor. Walls closed in, fire and water jets erupted. Every trap at once, chaos unleashed. The prisoners screamed, scattering. But Daniel stayed calm. His eyes locked on the rhythm of the pulse. He muttered, "Not fight it. Break the pattern." From his boot, he pulled a small item he had hidden since the beginning. Nothing special, just a coil of wire and a piece of iron magnet he had scavenged before capture. To the aliens, it was worthless. To Daniel, it was a key. He wrapped the wire tightly, forming a crude loop. Then he pressed it against the crystal floor. The hum vibrated through it. His crude magnet resonated, disrupting the rhythm. The core screeched, its light flickering. The traps faltered. Fire jets sputtered. Water froze mid-surge. For the first time, the labyrinth hesitated. The guards above shouted, in disbelief. What is he doing? How can human scrap break the core? Daniel gritted his teeth, forcing the magnet closer. The crystal cracked, lines spreading across its glowing surface. The hum became erratic, losing its perfect rhythm. The prisoners, still trembling, looked up at him. Their eyes widened as they realized. The labyrinth was not invincible. It could bleed. It could break. The core screamed louder, sending a shockwave that hurled Daniel backward. His body slammed against the wall. His vision blurred, but he forced himself up, blood dripping from his forehead. He raised his voice, strong despite the pain. "It's only a machine. Machines fail." The survivors, hearing his words, rose with new strength. They hurled stones, claws, anything they had at the pulsing heart. Each strike weakened it further, cracks spreading until the blue light inside began to shatter. The core roared one final time, a sound like a dying world. Then it split apart, shards flying. The entire chamber shook as the labyrinth walls froze, unmoving. The shifting maze was no longer alive. Silence fell. Only the heavy breaths of the survivors filled the air. Daniel staggered forward and scratched one last mark on the broken wall. His voice was hoarse but steady. "The heart is broken. The maze has no mind now." Above, the alien guards screamed in panic. Their perfect prison had been destroyed by scraps of earth metal and a human's stubborn will. Their voices trembled. "It cannot be. The labyrinth cannot die." Yet the human broke it. The prisoners gathered around Daniel, their eyes shining with awe. For the first time in centuries, living beings stood at the heart of the Death Labyrinth and breathed not in fear, but in freedom. Daniel looked at them, his voice low but certain. "This place was meant to kill us. Instead, it taught us, remember this. No prison is perfect. No trap is flawless. As long as you think, you survive." The survivors whispered his words, carrying them like fire in dry grass, a whisper that was no longer weak, but a spark of rebellion spreading, and deep outside the chamber, beyond the frozen walls, the sound of the labyrinth's collapse echoed across the galaxy, a warning that no alien could ignore. Humans had beaten the impossible. The Death Labyrinth was broken. Its walls no longer shifted, its traps no longer roared to life. The once living maze lay silent. Smoke and dust curled in the air as the shattered core pulsed faintly, dying. Daniel stood at the front, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, his clothes torn, his skin burned, but his eyes still sharp. Behind him, dozens of survivors, gathered aliens of many species, their faces filled with disbelief and new strength. For the first time in history, they were not prisoners, they were escapees. Above, the alien guards shouted in chaos. Their voices rang out like broken bells. "Seal the gates. Kill them before they leave. No one must escape." Their hands struck glowing consoles, trying to force the labyrinth to close again, but the system only sparked and hissed, dead. The prisoners looked at each other, fear flashing again. But Daniel raised his hand, his voice steady. "The labyrinth is finished, we walk out now together." His words carried through the chamber like steel. The survivors nodded. Their whispers rose again. The human leads. The human sees. They moved as one, stepping into the long tunnels beyond the broken heart. The air grew colder, fresher. For the first time, they could feel the wind of freedom pushing against their skin. But the aliens would not allow it so easily. From the outer gates, squads of armored guards rushed in, their weapons glowing with energy. They snarled, "Back into the pit, or die where you stand." The survivors froze, their bodies trembling. They had no weapons, no armor. They had only their claws, their hands, their broken hope. Daniel stepped forward, his face calm, his voice low. "Then we die free, not slaves." He picked up a shard of the shattered core, its blue light still glowing faintly. Sparks jumped across his palm. He raised it like a blade. The guards hesitated. For centuries, the labyrinth had killed every prisoner. Now they saw survivors walking out, led by a human holding the broken heart of their perfect prison. Fear crept into their eyes. One prisoner, the insectoid who once begged Daniel to give up, now stood tall beside him. His many legs scraped against the ground. His voice rang out. "We follow the human." Another survivor, scaled and scarred, bared his teeth. "We are not prey anymore." The guards faltered. Their formation broke, and in that moment the survivors surged forward, not with fear but with fury. Stones, claws, fists. Everything became a weapon. They crashed into the guards like a wave. Daniel moved through the chaos, striking with the shard of crystal. Its energy cut through armor, sparks flying. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, but he was relentless. Every move calculated, every strike precise. The battle raged, cries and roars echoing through the broken labyrinth. But the prisoners fought with something the guards did not. Hope, and hope made them unstoppable. When the last guard fell, silence filled the tunnels. The survivors stood, panting, their eyes wide with shock. They had not only escaped the labyrinth, they had defeated their captors. Daniel raised the shard high, his voice steady. No one escapes the Death Labyrinth, except us. The survivors roared. Their voices shook the stone. The word spread like wildfire, carried through secret channels, carried by whispers in the night. Soon the galaxy would hear it. Above, the alien overlords sat in silence, their pride shattered, their perfect prison destroyed. One spoke in a trembling voice. If a human can break the labyrinth, what else can they break? Far beyond the prison world, rumors began to spread. Smugglers told the tale in shadowed bars, soldiers whispered it on distant fronts, slaves carried it in quiet voices from world to world. No one ever escaped until a human did. He broke the heart of the labyrinth with a simple trick. He led prisoners out alive. The labyrinth is dead and humans cannot be chained. Daniel stood at the open gate, the stars shining above for the first time since his capture. The wind carried the smell of freedom. Behind him, the survivors waited, their eyes shining with new life. He turned back to them, his voice calm but strong. Remember this day. The labyrinth was not unbeatable. Nothing is, as long as you keep thinking, as long as you refuse to bow. They nodded, their voices rising together, not whispers now, but a roar of defiance. We are free. And so they walked into the night, a broken shard of the labyrinth glowing faintly in Daniel's hand, a symbol that no prison, no empire, no labyrinth would ever hold humanity down again.